Okay, over to you, Chair Reed.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. And thank you for showing up. I mean, I know it's happy holidays, Merry Marys for everybody these days, and everybody's trying to get stuff done. And we really appreciate you coming. This is our last board meeting of 2025. And we've done a lot of things. And so it's really good for us all to gather together and plan what's next. So I'm going to call this board meeting to order at 9:07 a.m. And first item of business is public comments. Do I hear any public comments? Okay, hearing none. We have a fond farewell and a warm welcome right up front that we need to deal with. And we are so sad to say goodbye to Matt Ranelli. And, I think about Matt, I mean, an attorney specializing in environment, energy, and land use law. And he just always brings a wealth of experience and a real world perspective to everything he does. And his participation on this board has been invaluable. Plus, and I think this is a huge important asset, he's fun. So we are really sad to say goodbye to Matt. And I know you wanted to say a few words, Brian.
Yeah. Just a quick shout out to Senator Looney, who is just a steadfast supporter of the Green Bank. As exemplified in a number of different ways, including his appointment of Matt Ranelli and now Lisa. We're gonna have some time and place to acknowledge Matt. We've got a lot to say about him and his tenure here, and everything he's contributed over the years. I feel like he's been around even since our predecessor, the Connecticut Clean Energy Fund, years. So lots of institutional knowledge there. We're going to miss him. And there's going to be a time and a place where we're going to celebrate that service. So just want to put that out for the board. And then just a quick, welcome, and I'll turn it to you, Chair Reed. Welcome to Lisa, who's, joining us from the West Coast today. And as Lisa was going back and forth this week with Cheryl, getting prepped for the meeting, we'll be working in the coming months to onboard Lisa. But I was noting, Lisa, your travels to New Mexico and thinking about Santa Fe and Cafe Pascual's and everything that goes on out there on the West Coast. But just a big welcome. We're looking forward to you joining the board here as well. Let me turn it back to you, Chair Reed.
Thank you. Yes, Lisa, we're very happy to see you. Also, a Senator Looney appointment at the recommendation of Bob Duff, Senator Duff. I ran into the two of them the other night, and they're very excited about all the things that Lisa's going to bring to the board. She calls herself a retired attorney, and I don't know if that skill set ever gets retired, but we're really happy to have her. She's been working a lot in her community and in related areas on all kinds of things. So, Lisa, tell us about yourself and welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm just so honored to be part of your board, and of course, I have huge shoes to fill. I'm hoping that first of all, I'll be as fun as Matt, and secondly, that I'll bring some help to everybody in this board. I am now retiring from the Norwalk Common Council, where I was chair of the ordinance committee, and definitely a focus of our ordinances with Mayor Reeling's support was trying to make Norwalk the greenest city in the state of Connecticut. So I don't know if we accomplished it, but we certainly shot our best shot along those lines. So I also was president of the Norwalk Land Trust. We just merged with the Aspatech Land Trust, so that's another group of people that I've been working closely with, and we're doing all kinds of ideas of green infrastructure now at Aspatech. So I'm really hopeful that I'll learn a lot about what this board does in that area. So I'm thrilled to join all of you, and thank you so much for welcoming me.
Thank you. And congratulations on 2 new grandbabies. on the West Coast.
I forgot to mention that. Thank you. A big accomplishment on my part. Thank you.
So let's see. Let's move on to item 3, our consent agenda. Did you want to talk about that, Brian, a little bit of what's
Yeah, a
on
couple
the
things on the consent agenda. So we have 3 resolutions and then 4 updates. So just on the resolution side, we've got our meeting minutes from the October 24th board meeting. We've got a revision to our regular meeting schedule for 2026, specifically for June and July. We moved those a week out. And then thirdly, position descriptions for Executive Vice President of Operations and a Director of Marketing and Outreach. These will be promotions. Eric Schrago, sitting here, will be promoted from Vice President to Executive Vice President, and Rob Schmidt on our marketing team will be our Director of Marketing and Outreach. So those are position descriptions. In general, any position description director level and above comes to the board for review and approval. So those are the 3 resolution items. And then the report outs, you've seen us, Cheryl, myself, messaging around Board Effect, which is our platform, our software platform for all the board materials. It's going through some changes itself. So stay tuned in the early part of next year as it works through its being acquired by Diligent and make some modifications there. We may do a training or 2 or a communication or 2 on that. Just stay tuned as we adjust to some of the changes there. And then our report outs on staff approved transactions as well as restructurings and write-offs. There are no transactions in both of those memos. And then we provided the Q1 of FY26 financial report that we shared by email, just put it into the meeting minutes here itself, including our new section on risk management. So thank you to Tom on that. So that is the consent agenda, resolutions 1 through 3.
Okay, and does anybody have any questions or comments or concerns you want to express? Oh, okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. John Harity.
Thank you, John Harity. Do I hear a second?
Second, Jamie Cosgrove.
Thank you, Jamie Cosgrove. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Abstaining?
Lonnie, this is Joanne. I think I'll abstain because I wasn't here at the October 24th meeting, so I can't approve the meeting minutes.
Okay, that's
Oh,
so responsible and
well.
responsive of you. See, right away. Okay, all in favor? We did that, all right. So we've done. That's good. Let's see. Item number 4. I think Mackie and Elise are going to talk about the financing programs, and this has been a such a challenging year in terms of all of it, as one knows. But the transactions that we've done with CPACE again, I mean, it's one of our most innovative and popular programs. And so I think Mackie and Elise are going to talk about a few that we're dealing with now. Mackie.
Yes, thank you, Chair Reed. And yes, it has been an interesting year, which actually we'll talk about a few of those soon. The changes we've had to make to deal with all the interesting things that have happened. But first, to your point about CPACE and innovation, we're here to talk about the expansion of CPACE into resilience measures, and specifically green bank lending for those measures. There's a little background here. You might recall a few years ago, there was a statute passed to expand the authority of CPACE from just clean energy to also resilience. We did a lot of work to incorporate that expansion into our program guidelines in our role as administrator of the CPACE program. And that was done back, it was finalized last year. The board voted on those changes to the guidelines, which opened up the CPACE market for lending into resilience measures. And we've seen a few of our third-party lenders interested in that and even one project that included some resiliency measures. Today, we're going to talk about the Green Bank itself taking advantage of that resilience authority to lend our dollars into projects that include resiliency measures or all resilience. When we did the guidelines, when we brought those to the board, there was a lot of discussion about what, if any, role we should play in that. So before we became active in the resilience market from a lending perspective, we wanted to bring this lending policy forward, very broad to start with, just to make sure we're all aligned on what role we can and should play in the market before we ultimately end up hopefully bringing projects to you for approval. So today there's no resiliency specific projects that you're approving. It's just a lending policy. And this has been brought in. Interestingly, the CPACE statute is completely separate from the Green Bank statute. So when the resilience authority for CPACE passed, and we got we did the guideline changes that I mentioned, that opened up the private lenders to do CPACE lending. But the Green Bank actually couldn't do it itself because at the time we were still limited to clean energy. When the Environmental Infrastructure Authority was added to the Green Bank statute itself, because resiliency measures fall under, or a certain subset of resiliency measures fall under environmental infrastructure, that enabled us to begin to play a lending role for these CPACE measures. So that's allowing us to have the discussion that we're having here today about what our lending policy will look like. Next slide. So again, sort of setting the stage here before I hand it over to Elise to get into the lending policy. This here is the definition of resilience from the statute. As you can see, it is quite broad. Arguably, you can include many different measures to protect against threats such as, obviously climate change is mentioned here, but you could argue pandemics, cybersecurity, all those types of things could fall under here. So as Elise will get into, we want to talk through which part of this definition the Green Bank wants to engage in. Next slide. All right, so let me hand it over to Elise to get into a little more detail on those programmatic guidelines changes that I mentioned, and then get into our proposed lending policy. Elise?
Great. Thanks, Mackie. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. I'm on two different devices today, so I'm hoping I've got video on one and sound on another. Thanks, Mackie, and good morning, everybody. Happy holidays. So just to kind of pick up where Mackie left off here. So talking about the updates to the guidelines, Mackie mentioned we had those approved by the board. That was back in June of 2004. You all saw the new appendix and the additions to the guidelines. And here are kind of the points that we use to approach designing the new aspect of the program. In general, we built the guidelines as a way to kind of understand what the market needs were going to be. And also, as Mackie mentioned, allow our eligible third parties that are eligible to lend in the market to start identifying and financing resilience projects. So, generally looking at things like common climate change adaptation and nature-based solution measures as examples. And also utilizing existing resilience standards. The fortified designation is one of those that we'll talk about. The board's heard a little bit about that from us, but also from our colleagues on the Smart E team. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. And then also allowing for other resilience measures to be considered. As Mackie mentioned, really broad definition of resilience. We just saw that on the screen. So we wanted to kind of keep the general guidelines open enough that we could kind of use that to understand really, again, what those market needs were and then of course adjust as we need to in the future. So if we go to the next slide. Yeah, so just to quickly talk about the differences here. So the new additions to the guidelines and some of the exemptions that were included now that the resilience and EV charging infrastructure has been added to the statute. So the biggest exemption here is that the savings to investment ratio is not required for resilience improvements or EV charging infrastructure. Those are lumped in together with the statute change. And so just as a quick reminder, and for our newest board member, we have a requirement for clean energy projects under the CPACE program that the savings have to be greater than the investment. So it's literally just a division example where the dollar savings are divided by the actual investment in the project. And that needs to be greater than 1 over the effective useful life of the equipment that's being installed. So for resilience improvements, that is now an exemption. So resilience improvements do not need to adhere to that SIR requirement. However, there is still there's a resilience study that's needed. On the clean energy side, it's an energy audit or a feasibility study for renewable energy. But for resilience improvements, it's a resilience study. And that resilience study still needs to include an assessment of cost savings. That's written directly in the statute, so that's an important piece to focus on. So there needs to be an assessment. The cost savings needs to be analyzed. However, there is no minimum savings requirement as there is with clean energy. And then all of the other standard CPACE eligibility requirements are still going to be applicable. So this is available. Resilience improvements can be included in a retrofit project or in a new construction project. The property still needs to be a commercial property. The municipality needs to be participating in the program. So that means that the town or the city needs to have signed a resolution with the Green Bank allowing any commercial or nonprofit or multifamily property in that town to essentially take advantage of the program. And then there's also lender consent. So lender consent is required, another statutory requirement. And that means that if there's any existing property secured debt on the property, that lender, those lenders need to consent to subordinate to CPACE, and CPACE takes a senior position. So all of that is still required. It's really just kind of that savings component that necessarily isn't required now. And so some of the new additions, we talked about the resilience study already. So there's a pre-study worksheet that's also included in the guidelines. It's an exhibit to the resilience appendix. Pre-study worksheet kind of gives the property owner or the lender or whoever is working on the project the ability to kind of, help them figure out what may or may not be eligible and what they may or may not be able to look at in terms of resilience improvements. And then these are the points that need to be included in that resilience study, which is the requirement. And you'll see there, the fourth one down is that assessment of cost savings. And then for fortified projects, which again, we'll get into in a little bit, generally fortified is a building envelope and roof standard for resilience improvements. But there's a whole slew of requirements and really good documentation and things that need to be included to get that fortified designation. So all of that would essentially kind of take the place of that resilience study and information we would need if a project was looking for fortified designation and financing through CPACE. All right. And then just to mention too, I think Mackie might have mentioned this already, but just to put a point on this, this is in the memo as well, but wanted to make sure that we pointed out that that any project that the Green Bank or finances for resilience improvements would not be using ratepayer or RGGI funds to finance that project. Those funds are specifically designated for clean energy projects. So those funds would not be used for resilience improvements, for funding resilience improvements. Okay, so this is the lending policy. This is the meat of it. Again, as Mackie mentioned, really broad. We don't have any projects yet. We're hoping to bring this policy with us to the market to find those projects eventually. But this is kind of what we're looking at here. So there's two aspects to the policy that we looked at. The financing programs team worked with investments and with environmental infrastructure to come up with this lending policy. So the first area of focus is the financial underwriting. And you'll see here that it's pretty similar to what we would do with a clean energy project. Working with Bert and Priyank and the investments team, we really kind of realized that we've got a really good structure in place for our financial underwriting, and that there won't be too many differences in that. So we're still going to review previous 3 years and current year financials of the property owner entity. And then we also have lien and loan to value maximums that we will adhere to. There's debt service coverage requirements, both on an annual and overall, total loan term requirements. We still do environmental due diligence, and we, of course, will still need to get lender consent. So again, really all of that is standard to what we do for clean energy projects, and we would carry that over to, to resilience improvements. And I'll pause there and let Bert or Priyank add anything they'd like.
Oops. Sorry, Priyanka, you on the line? Did you want to make any comment here?
Hey, yep. Hey, thank you, Elise. Yep, no additional comments. As Elise mentioned, our underwriting is not really changing, so it's really just going to be the standard financial underwriting that we do for our typical CPACE projects.
Couple questions. I think I saw John's hand.
Oh, I see
yeah.
Jamie. Jamie, do you have a question?
Well, go ahead, John. John raised his.
Oh, John, sorry.
Oh, okay. Just how would resiliency result in savings? I don't understand that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think there's a few examples. I'm going to give one that I've kind of given before, but so let's say you've got a building, and that building experiences flooding. Maybe there's some hard surfaces around the exterior of the building, and there's not really good drainage. So they get a lot of flooding, and maybe the basement floods. I know we see a lot of that happening in Connecticut. And maybe there's mechanical equipment that they have in their basement. So doing something like, and perhaps maybe that equipment's been ruined in the past because there's a foot of water in the basement due to flooding and hardscapes and all of that. So doing something like moving that equipment to another floor, or potentially adding a rain garden, or doing some planting to help with filtration, as opposed to having that runoff with the water really having no place to go. Doing something like pervious concrete around the exterior. All of those things would help to mitigate the flooding, which could potentially help, number one, maybe not have to replace that equipment. If it's not broken, you don't have to fix it. But also maybe that could cut down on maintenance costs, for example. Maybe they're not having to pay, the building owner's not having to pay their operations manager to, bail water out with a bucket in those flooding instances. So I think there's lots of indirect ways that some of those savings can happen. Of course, there's also potentially, and I know Brian Garcia is working really, really hard on a lot of this stuff, but there's also potentially ways that insurance premiums could, potentially come down. And I see Brian went off mute if he wants to add to that, but that might be another way to think about savings.
Elise, that was great. Yeah, and I chuckle a little bit, John, because you hit a really important thing. Joanna Wozniak Brown is on here. Within the Public Act 25-33 that just passed this year on resilience improvement districts is a definition around increased savings. And the intention there was if there's more investment in our communities in resilience, then somehow those savings should be monetizable. So to Elisa's point, another direct result of, say, a fortified roof, which Elisa's going to talk about, would be that the insurance company who's providing property insurance for that building reduced their premiums as a result of that fortified roof. You know, we operate in a state with 90 plus property and casualty insurers. It's a very competitive market. There are a handful of them, maybe 20 of them, that offer discounts for fortified roofs, both on the CPACE building side that we're going to talk about, as well as the residential roof side. So there's all of that. And then secondly, if you kind of dig into the resilience definition, as Elise and Mackie have laid out, you know, to prepare for, respond to, recover from. The recover from is an important part in that timeline of a natural disaster. You know, we're trying to reduce avoided losses. So what can we do to invest today to prepare for those events so that when they hit, those buildings are resilient and can reduce avoided losses? So trying to quantify all of that and make it monetizable so that we can build it into cash flows is a really important thing that we're all super focused on and trying to realize.
And I'll add in that and I think Brian was getting to this, the avoidance of business disruption. Yeah, where the operations of companies and businesses can not only be disruptive, but it can impair cash flow. You know, you just think about from a retailer's perspective, having to turn away business or having to shut down your business operations, but you're not manufacturing, you know, for hours or days at a time. You know, that can be very impactful. On the insurance side, it also opens up the possibility that particularly a business, you know, might be more willing to increase their deductible. If they're seeing that they have less exposure to risk, they might be willing to, say, increase their deductible. That'll lead to lower insurance costs. So either from a risk perspective, the insurance company recognizing that it's a lower risk and beginning to appreciate this. I think we're going to have to work with the insurance commissioner on this a bit more, but also the business themselves can actually take that into their own hands a bit.
If I could just comment on that part of it, I can see the impact on insurance premiums. And I can see the impact if somebody already has like a flooding basement, as the first example was. But but otherwise, it's all like potential savings if there was a disaster. And although I think that's really worthy, the monetizing of that is real. It is totally speculative. I would think. I'm not that I disagree with it, although I don't think we should do cybersecurity, just as a side comment. But anyways, it just seems like it's a different animal than what we've been doing so far, which is assured savings based on building upgrades. So I'm just trying to get comfortable with it.
Yeah, John.
This is Lonnie. I'm just thinking, John Harity, that I was just thinking along the way when Elise was talking about also it can help protect your workforce. I mean, if you've got vulnerable buildings and your workforce is being in some ways, you know, put in harm's way, you know, that sounds like something to be very valuable. And that's in addition to being the right thing to do. It feels like it would save some money on several fronts. I thought you would appreciate that, John.
No, you're right. And it's just, again, it's unless we you know, can predict the future. If there's something that you're working on back there in the Alexander Pope room, Brian, that that see future risks clearly. I mean, it's just like it's speculative.
I see
Yeah,
Jamie
John,
has his hand up. I just wanted to make sure we get him in.
Yeah, my initial question was very similar to John's. It sounds like we can consider or factor in beyond cost savings, but cost avoidance. And I think then the discussion is, well, how much of that avoidance are we speculating or is certain? But I think there's a lot of opportunity there to kind of have some, discussion on that, and also some real numbers when you think about the vulnerable infrastructure, housing that exists in these areas. My question, though, was with the initial question was with the resiliency study. I guess who performs that? Who engages the party to perform that, and what are the credentials or requirements for the responsible party to put together the resiliency study?
Yeah, good. Another, excuse me, another good question. So we don't have any right now built into the guidelines. We don't have any specific requirements with who is doing that study necessarily. There could be lots of different professionals, depending on what the work is being done, that may be putting that together. We have really only seen one come through so far with a third party project that closed about a year and a half ago now. And the folks that did that were the actual, I believe, Mackie can correct me here if I'm wrong, if I'm misremembering, but I believe it was the design team that was working. It was a new construction project, so it was the design team that was putting, the full property design together. That was performing that resilience study. In that situation, it was a pretty specific resilience improvement. It was installing pervious concrete, so that was a very one kind of measure. So I think that was pretty easy to incorporate into their design. But those were the folks that were doing that. I'd imagine Lee's also on the line. She can correct me or jump in here too if she'd like. But I'd imagine that we'll see other professionals such as folks that are. I think we'll definitely see a lot of projects come through that are doing flood mitigation. We're going to get 2 inches of rain today from what the weather says. So, lots of that out there. But the professionals that work in those particular industries. Lee, I don't know if you want to add anything.
But just think they would be.
I'll just. Jamie, can I jump in just to respond?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted, so they would, that the individual putting together, or use the one example that you have, that the resiliency study was essentially put together by the applicant, I would say, the team working for the applicant. And then, right, so they're engaged through them. They submit that to the Green Bank, and then staff from the Green Bank is reviewing that study. Does the Green Bank provide comment? Do they provide additional review, or is it we relying on the professional team that brought that forward? I just didn't know if there was another, check on that, I guess, or comment period.
Yes. Yes. Sorry. Yes, that was probably not the answer to the question you wanted, but yes. With third party projects, those are coming to us to review. We're reviewing the full project to approve it in our role as the administrator of the program. For projects that we are, so yes, if there were comments or anything, if it didn't quite meet all of the requirements that are outlined in the resilience study, we would go back to the applicant and let them know that. And for projects that we would finance, which is, the part of this lending policy we're discussing today, we would be doing the same thing just for our own our own project. So we would be reviewing that. Green Bank would be reviewing that resilience study in pretty much the same way.
But just, so we'll certainly look at it to make sure it meets the sort of basic statutory requirements, but it is different from our energy review, where we have a technical professional, not within the Green Bank, that we outsource, that is doing a technical review on the product. They're actually looking at, okay, this contractor says it's going to save X dollars, this lighting measure is going to save X dollars. Is that really an appropriate estimate of the savings? In this case, there's not a technical professional who is doing that review. I don't know a good example. Is this concrete thick enough for to withstand a 100-year flood? That level of technical review is not happening, primarily because of the same point that you and John are making. There is no cash flow here that we are lending against. So we don't need to verify that those savings are going to be there. We are relying on the property owner, the contractor, and the technical professional doing the study, that they're getting the measure right. And then we are, because to your earlier point, this is a little more theoretical than energy project's cash flow. The financial underwriting becomes much more important. We always do, or not, but the investment team always does a fantastic job of digging into, regardless of how great the energy cash flow is, they're looking at the underlying strength of the company. And if it's not good, then we're not going to do the project, even if it's, the SIR is fantastic. So for these projects where it is the project cash flows are not as, or more theoretical, that financial underwriting becomes even more important. And it's ultimately the strength of the company's financials that will pull a project through, because we just don't have the same known cash flows.
This is Lonnie. I should say, we all know John's background, but just to remind you that Jamie comes out of, in addition to running the town of Branford for 12 years, a construction family, and he ran his family's construction company. So, he probably has some relevant insights as to what looks like, a good plan. And I think it's really good to utilize our board's various talents, along the way. So just to remind you, that's a resource.
Chair Reed, it looks like there's a question from Brenda and maybe a comment from Lee.
Oh, okay. Brenda?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to offer the perspective of why this program is critically important to, someone like me who's the nonprofit owner of a commercial building. There are two reasons that we would, two critical reasons that resiliency is important for us. And I would imagine that a microgrid project would fall under resiliency. And the first reason would be to save lives during critical safety emergencies. A microgrid would allow us to preserve power for a few days if the grid should go down. The other critical piece would be to reduce our energy costs, which is very expensive for us here, again, running an 80,000 square foot building. But the other major component is that between the period of 2000 and 2020, the state of Connecticut has had 7 declared emergencies, ranging from 9/11 to Winter Storm Alfred and even the Sandy Hook tragedy. So, and most recently COVID. So there is another emergency looming. We just don't know what it is. It could be grid failure. It could be another health emergency. And having a microgrid here in a Justice 40 community would save us money, but it would also very much save lives.
And did Lee want to say something?
Yeah, just to chime in, in the way that we're thinking about resilience and the way that we should all kind of view it, it's not just those acute shocks and severe weather events, but it's also chronic stressors. Yeah. And in Connecticut, we've seen from Yukon Circa's work on Resilient Connecticut, there are parking lots that are routinely flooding in even minimal rain conditions that do, on a very regular basis, disrupt business operations and revenues. Also, there are certain design practices, such as passive design, which I'll point to New Haven's own Hotel Marcel, which is the first hotel in the nation to employ these types of practices, which are really just a better way of doing the building envelope to achieve operational and utility cost savings, which have all kinds of resilience benefits, from wildfire smoke exposure to just better heating and cooling retention. So just to chime in, John, kind of in response to how people would think about not just preparing for acute shock, but also those chronic stressors that are quite material to the bottom line of businesses in Connecticut. And then, Jamie, to your point on the resilience study, we're just looking at examples of ways to either standardize or understand the full assessment of a property's top hazards now into the future. The good ones that we've seen so far, you know, they're identifying potential improvements for lower utility and operational costs, even though that's not a part of our underwriting for a savings to investment. So just wanted to chime in on those fronts.
Any other questions?
Looks like Dominic Grant has a question, and then Joe DiNicola.
Okay, Dominic.
Yes, hi. This is great work by everyone to kind of push us more into this, which is, you know, as I'm sitting here with the rain streaming, hopefully not into my living room. I think that I wonder if there's an opportunity, and I'm sure Lee and everyone over there is thinking about this, but to kind of, you know, I think there's a lot of work that's done on the academic side and sort of the research side around climate resiliency and sort of quantifying from a big picture, you know, resilient communities and things like that, specifically around avoided costs. And I wonder if there's an opportunity, you know, together with UConn or Yale to do some kind of project where we take some of those academic methodologies and try and customize them to something that the Green Bank could use as like as a standard measure. I know we've done similar types of things in the energy side, you know. So I think quantifying this kind of thing has been done, and there are ways to do it. It just hasn't been done like on a project by project basis, really, you know, in a repeatable way. And so I think there's an opportunity for the Green Bank also to lead the way in kind of marrying those bigger picture community-wide calculations with something that's more on a project finance level.
Any other questions or comments?
Maybe just a quick comment to Dominic. Dominic, that's a great suggestion given UConn's strength in the insurance industry. And, you know, with respect to the methodologies we've developed in the past on emissions, on job creation, on, you know, you name it, working with a partner like UConn to wrap our minds around whatever those metrics are, avoided losses, whatever, and then having our Connecticut Insurance Department opine on those methodologies that they're a reasonable estimate of the benefits created as a result of, then could form the basis of our reporting on the impact. It's kind of the convention how we've done it is the state agencies have blessed it and given us kind of the go ahead. But I love that thinking.
Chair Reed, I did. It's Joe. I just had one further comment
Oh,
on this.
yes, Joe. Please go ahead.
And you know, I think it's very interesting, and I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about the specific measures and how those will be applied. But my observation would be around, you know, I certainly agree with this idea of looking at the savings, but I think there's another aspect to the value here, which is property appreciation. By further protecting the property, in theory, is going to make that property more valuable. So I'd be interested to hear, not necessarily this morning, but, how you're going to, embed that in the underwriting. But more broadly, I think it would be interesting if the Green Bank could help lead a better understanding of how these resiliency measures add value to property owners. Because I think that will help incentivize folks to do more of this. If they see their property appreciates and there's data that supports that, I think that would be further encouragement for people to enact these changes to their property. So not necessarily a question there, but just an observation that this could be useful in gathering information that has broader applications.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Anything else?
Oh, hi, Lonnie, it's Adrian.
Hey, Adrian.
Brenda and I, along with a partner in New Haven, have been looking at resiliency hubs. Brenda already has one, obviously, with her big factory. And we were looking at our warehouse to provide some space for people to come to if there were to be a flood or any other natural disaster. And then, of course, hold kind of resources, possibilities of exploring what resources people could have in the neighborhood through getting deep folks to come and hold like a sessions at that resource hub. So, just throwing out a couple of those ideas there. But so I can see very well how we would spend money for these resources hubs, but I want to have some ideas about how we get the money back. And I think the bank is probably interested in that too, because we built out a budget of about $115,000 or $16,000 per hub to look at what these should look like and what services should be provided. So we have a better handle on the cost, but I don't think we have much of a handle yet on the revenues, besides going out for grants, which of course we can do. But are there any natural revenue sources that we should be looking at?
I was just thinking when Joni Nicola was speaking, which is a terrible thing to think, but I was just thinking, well, if increased property values create increased property taxes, perhaps there should be a little percentage there that would be returned to the resiliency projects. Just thinking.
It'll bear fruit.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes, this is John Harity.
Hi, John.
Two things. One is the bank's original mission was to cut carbon. And I really hope that we don't lose sight of that. I feel to a certain extent that some state leaders have pulled back from that somewhat. That's a huge mistake. And that's the most important thing that we're doing because nobody else does that. The other thing that I'm thinking is the Green Bank now incorporates care of water and soil and air, and now it's adding resiliency. And I hope that as the bank's mission expands, that we don't become a bureaucracy that loses the incredibly unique character of the bank, which is to be very nimble and innovative and resourceful. There will be a lot more on the plate now, and it makes it more difficult to be creative in those circumstances, or it may. So I'm counting on the great talents of the bank staff to maintain the character of the bank as it is now.
John, maybe I just a quick response, I think, on that. I think we're always driven by the mission, which is to confront climate change by increasing and accelerating investment in Connecticut's green economy to create more resilient, healthier, and equitable communities. Like that's what we're guided by. And when we think about confront climate change, for years, the model has been built around the definition of clean energy, right? In clean energy, we know not only reduces greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution and all the associated environmental benefits from that, but it also reduces energy costs on those who partake in it, right? So we know that. On the other side of confronting climate change is becoming more resilient, adapting to the impacts of climate change and becoming more resilient to it. So we're all super far behind in that realm. And we're getting hit by random events like the 1,000-year flood that hit Connecticut in the fall of 2024 on the western side of the state. You know, we're getting hit by the downpours in Hartford hitting our stormwater infrastructure, right? Like we're being sent signals that if you're not prepared for it, then your citizens and businesses are going to be adversely impacted by it. So we're motivated by confronting climate change to reduce emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, but to also prepare for its impacts because it's here and it's around us. So how do we increase investment by providing families and businesses with the access to that capital so that they can prepare and adjust to? So just some thoughts. We're still.
Just don't become a hack, Brian.
Point taken.
All right. So I'll finish up this slide here. So good kind of segue there into talking about the types of measures that we're gonna try to focus on, focus our lending on, the green bank lending. So we again worked with environmental infrastructure on this as well. And we kind of settled on projects that will help to adapt to climate change or mitigate against climate challenges, and focus on projects that are looking to make nature-based resilience improvements, which Lee's going to talk about some of that in a few minutes. But that's really kind of what we're focusing on. Also looking at projects that are seeking fortified designation. And I have another slide on that just to give you a little bit more background into fortified. But you know, bringing this all together, this is kind of that basic policy that we came up with, and really wanted to mostly put this together so we could give the board guidance on the types of projects that we would potentially be considering and how we would look at them from an underwriting perspective. Again, as Mackie kind of mentioned at the very beginning, with the hope that, you know, this is something that we can consider, so that way the team can go out to market and start to find some of these projects to actually to bring you for approval, but certainly wanted to get your perspective and your thoughts on what the policy looks like ahead of going out there, so we're all kind of working off of the same page.
And I just want to be mindful of time. We're already an hour into the meeting here, so let's try to quickly go through examples in the fortified discussion so we can get to the vote and make sure we get to all the transactions we have.
And Mackie, I'll be really brief. Lee, Director of Environmental Infrastructure Programs. Really appreciate the rich discussion. So just to note here, you know, as part of the CPACE Resilience expansion, and where appropriate, we do hope to spur projects that utilize some form of nature-based solution. For those who've heard us speak to this prior, those are actions to, excuse me, protect, sustainably manage, or restore natural or modified ecosystems to address societal challenges while providing measurable co-benefits. So in the context of CPACE Resilience Project, these would not be, you know, fuzzy feel-good measures. These would entail well-known, highly vetted, and trusted engineering practices that can deliver cheaper, easier ways of reducing long-term climate risk or delivering other benefits, such as on-site stormwater management solutions. And I'll say, if you want to go next slide. John, I'll just speak to your point. Nature-based solutions are a really great way to meet local zoning ordinances or to get resilience benefits, in some cases with a way of achieving sequestration potential or the greenhouse gas benefits. So happy to speak about that offline. Plenty of studies to ratify that. And I'll just say, we'll only speak to the example of flood and stormwater management. It is the one that we expect to hit kind of the highest priority, or at least initial adoption. So nature-based solutions in this context are design, building, or site retrofits. These could be bioswales. This could entail pervious pavement, rain gardens, other things that help to capture or slow or filter stormwater. They can reduce flood and drainage risk to a property owner. They can sustain property value. They can sustain business revenues. So all ways to help enhance property resilience and shore up the bottom line, especially in the face of increased climate risk. So different ways to do that, and can be at a lower life cycle cost. So the kind of cliche example is that concrete depreciates over time. Certain natural engineering practices or green infrastructure solutions appreciate over time as the underlying resilience improvement grows and benefits. And we do have our first example of a CPACE resilience project from a third party in Connecticut. It was closed by Counterport and Darien. Over the life cycle of this project, they estimate that their use of porous pavement is going to help manage 650,000 gallons a year of stormwater. It is a small carve out of a broader CPACE project. This was the largest CPACE project in the state of Connecticut to date. So the resilience portion was relatively small. But as we understand it, the small carve out and the use of pervious pavement very importantly helped this new construction project meet its local zoning ordinances for managing stormwater on site and not adding additional runoff to the system. Happy to speak to a lot of these elements offline. You know, the issue of combined sewage overflow in Connecticut is a big one. The amount of pervious surface and additional stormwater hitting our systems. Our systems were not built to manage the volume of stormwater and impervious surface that we've built. And so potentially through meeting local zoning ordinances, we may see additional carve outs for these, or we may see standalone resilience projects. We don't exactly know yet, but do point to this first example as perhaps a more mainstream one. So we'll skip over the next two slides. We just prepared some content on extreme heat and rising sea level for folks who realize, to the point of property value loss, that Connecticut is predicted to receive 20 inches of sea level rise in the next 25 years. So this is, you know, a near and present risk to many of our coastal and inland fluvial communities. But I'll hit the pause button there in the interest of time and pass it back to Elise for Fortified.
Perfect. Thank you, Lee. And yeah, so just quickly on Fortified, again, this is a program the board's seen a few times now. But Fortified was developed by IBHS, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. And it's a standard designation to help reduce damage to structures following severe weather and other issues from climate change challenges. So again, kind of something that would potentially appreciate a building if that building is set to withstand some of the extreme weather that we see on a pretty regular basis. So if we go to the next slide, there are 3 different designations here. There's fortified roof, silver, and gold. You can see they kind of build on each other. We do expect to see, just based on what our experience has been with clean energy so far, we know that we see a lot of roof projects come through that are also looking to do solar. So we certainly think that the fortified roof portion of this program is going to be something that folks are definitely going to be interested in and pairing with their solar PV system as well. But we know that roofs are definitely something that businesses need to make sure their building is operational, and something that we see already quite often as a measure coming through for financing. And then last slide here is just some future considerations. So the board understands kind of, you know, what we will do post, hopefully getting approval to move forward with our lending policy, one of the first things that we'll do is go out and work with our contractor and developer network, or really develop one for these new types of developers and contractors that we're seeing, the folks that will actually be doing this work, working with them and training them on the program, making sure they have the tools that they need to use this program in the market. And of course, that we anticipate that will lead to a lot of the lead generation for us. That's been true with our clean energy projects for the last 12, 13 years. So we think that will continue. So certainly want to focus on that. And then talking about capturing the value. So insurance premiums and or deductible reductions, maybe expanding insurance coverage, avoided maintenance costs, ability to keep businesses open, all things we've already kind of talked about through natural discussion today, but continuing to think about capturing that value. And then also thinking about working with appraisers and how property values may increase. So the board's thinking exactly in the same way that the team was when we were thinking about this expansion, which was great to hear through our discussions. And then of course, mainly also understanding how we might adapt our policy as we start to actually review projects. That'll be the best way for us to again understand those market needs and what the Green Bank is looking at in terms of projects to continue to further our mission. And I will leave it at, the last thing I'll mention too is that we did bring this policy to the deployment committee in May. I don't know if we mentioned that yet, but we did bring this to the deployment committee in May, hoping to get a recommendation to bring it to you all, the full board, for approval. So we did that in May. And we got that recommendation from the deployment committee. So bringing it to you all here for approval.
Maybe Elise, thank you for all that. Maybe Elise, Mackey, one more comment. We've got Lisa on the line. Just going back to Public Act 13-198, which was the revision to commercial property assessed clean energy following Public Act 1180. Chair Reed's probably very familiar with this policy back then when we worked to revise it with then Senator Duff, right? And this policy has led to over 400 projects receiving over $400 million of investment in our community. So CPACE is a really important policy that is, we're 25% of that investment, in the private markets of the other 75%. So this is an important vehicle to mobilize private investment as a policy. So thank you, Lee, and Elise for that presentation.
Aha, resolution 4. Do I hear a motion to approve resolution 4?
This is Dominic, so move.
Thank you, Dominic. Do I hear a second?
Joanne will second.
This is Brenda. Okay.
Thank you, Joanne. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. Moving on.
Okay, Brian, you still want me to do this quick update, just do it very fast, or do you want to move this to the end to get to the transactions?
Let's do it very, very fast.
Okay, so apologies for doing a complicated update in a short amount of time, but given where we are, I'll be quick. So just folks probably don't need a reminder, but there were significant changes to clean energy policy made by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. One of the major ones was a phase out of the investment tax credit, a key driver of the economics of a solar project. The main thing to be cognizant of here is the the line between the red box and the first yellow box. At the end of this year, there will changes made to the ability to access the investment tax credit, essentially constraining a lot of the existing supply chain for solar equipment based on the FEOC acronym you see here, Foreign Entity of Concern. In short, this should increase prices and reduce availability of equipment. So we need to, as much to the extent possible, preserve or quote unquote safe harbor the projects we have now so that they are not subject to the new policy that will come into effect at the beginning of next year. And the way we do that is beginning construction, which per IRS guidelines means we can spend a minimum of 5% on the project prior to the end of the year, and it is safe harbored under the existing policy. So we are doing that in two broad buckets of projects. Next slide. The first one is our existing solar map pipeline. Oh, yeah, there we go. Which includes state projects, AMP, which is affordable multifamily housing, and municipal projects. For all of these, we have a solid project scope. We have contracts either signed with the property owner or in final negotiation. And we have, as I mentioned, a contractor selected through an RFP. With those contractors, we are essentially moving an equipment purchase that would be made much later in the process forward and doing it now so that we are spending that money before the end of the year. Overall, this will be just under $5.5 million. We've done just over 4 million and are in the process of finalizing just over 1 million now. Again, this is spending we would have done anyway. We'd like to have done it a little later so that the projects were a little more de-risked. But this is the environment we live in. And should any of the projects fall apart and we have equipment that we can't use for that project, we can reallocate it to other projects. So it's, it's ultimately not a huge risk as we see it. Next slide. And then looking a little earlier in our pipeline. So these are where we don't have a contractor selected. We don't have agreements in place. We're still in conversations with customers. We can still buy equipment, which would safe harbor those. So we have done an RFP to purchase panels directly from the manufacturer so that we have those and can allocate them to the projects in this pipeline, which will preserve their ITC status. We're looking at a total of right now, although we're finalizing the project total, just over 16 megawatts. Could be a little bigger with a spend of around 5.7 million. And we're hoping we are reviewing the bids which came into this procurement last week. We're reviewing those now, and we'll have to get the purchase made before the end of the year. And that is it. Again, just no vote here. Just wanted to update on all this activity that's happening. And this is all using the solar authority that was given to us by the board. We thought this update was important because although it falls under that existing authority you've already voted on, it's not exactly how we plan to do it or to use that authority. But again, we're having to just adjust to the realities of the environment thanks to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. All right, unless there's any questions, we'll jump into our first transactions.
Any questions? Not hearing any.
I'm happy to connect offline with anyone if they want to talk more about this.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Atruria. I work on the financing programs team. I will be presenting the next 3 CPACE transactions. The first one we have, we're requesting financing for a CPACE transaction located at 700 Flanders Road in Mystic, which is a part of Groton. This property is an industrial flex building that is tenant occupied and owned by Mystic Business Park 2. The owner, Tim Taliska, purchased the property in 2016 and built 81 modular units across 7 industrial buildings. He currently has 46 separate tenants leasing out the modular units, with some tenants leasing out multiple units. This is the second CPACE transaction at this property. The first project was a 146 kilowatt rooftop solar array in 2023. And this project will be a 330 kilowatt system rooftop solar installation with Earthlight Technologies on buildings 12 and 13. And this customer has secured a second incentive agreement with Eversource. We are requesting approval for a 20-year loan at 5.25% for $789,000 in financing. Our underwriters factored in the owner's first CPACE loan into their financial evaluation. Between both loans, the loan to value is 81%, lien to value is 20%, and the overall DSCR is 1.54. Next slide, please. For a standard mortgage repayment schedule, the customer's overall SIR is 1.43, with cash flows being positive in every year except year 11, where there are estimated inverter repair costs factored in. So we also presented a, next slide, please. We also presented a sculpted repayment schedule to the customer where they can apply the ITC in year 2. With this repayment option, the overall SIR is 1.56 and the cash flows are all positive except year 2 where they would be applying the ITC. We presented both options to the customer and he's still deciding which option he'd like to go with. Are there any questions on this transaction?
Earthlight Technologies is a solar installer, is that right?
Yes. Yep.
This is interesting. The shoemaker's children's have no shoes.
Any questions?
They also do energy efficiency, John.
Okay. Hearing no questions or comments beyond John's. Do I hear a motion to approve resolution 5?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Do I hear a second?
Seconded, Adrian.
Thank you, Adrian. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, moving on to our next transaction. Yes, are we?
We're having a network problem, so we're gonna.
Oh, okay.
All right, I think we're okay. All right, let's go.
Resiliency.
Really, came back. We were almost redundant.
We're all just about to fall on the ground, the fetal position.
Yeah, I think we're good on this one. Okay. We'll move on to the second CPACE transaction. This one we are presenting is at 3236 Iron Horse Boulevard in Simsbury. This site is currently being developed as a 5-building multifamily rental property called Luminary at Simsbury Meadow. It will be a total of 175 dwelling units once completed. This project has grant funding through Build for CT that requires 20% of the total units to be designated as affordable rental housing units. The affordable targets various households with incomes between 60 to 120% of the area median income. The developers, Chris Nelson and Greg Ugaldi, both have over 25 years of experience in the industry. This CPACE transaction would consist of financing for 5 rooftop solar arrays. 2 of the 5 buildings have been substantially completed, while the remaining 3 will be completed between 2026 and early 2027. Next slide, please. We are requesting financing approval for 2 options to present to the borrower. The total project cost of the 5 arrays is $2,250,000. In the first option, we're seeking approval to provide a 20-year loan at 5.75% for 1.3 million in CPACE financing to the customer. And the customer would put in 750,000 in equity. In this scenario, the loan to value is 71%, lien to value is 2.44%, and the DSCR is 1.23. Next slide, please. The second alternative option we are seeking financing approval for is to provide a 20-year loan at 5.75% for 1.48 million to the customer. In this scenario, the borrower would put in an initial 600,000 in equity and then would use a portion of their ITC of about 200,000 in year 2 to pay down the loan. The financial metrics are pretty much the same for this option. The loan to value is 71.2%, lien to value is 2.7%, and the DSCR is 1.22. In scenario 1, where the customer is putting 750,000 upfront equity, the overall SIR is 1.46 with positive cash flows every year. In scenario 2, where the customer is putting in 600,000 equity and putting down a portion of their ITC, the overall SIR is 1.44 and the cash flows are positive every year. So in either scenario, the borrower will have positive cash flows. Does anyone have any questions on this transaction?
Okay, hearing no questions. Do I hear a motion to approve resolution 6?
Motion to approve, this is Brenda.
Thank you, Brenda. Do I hear a second?
I'll second. It's Joe.
Thank you, Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, excellent. And now on to the transaction in Oxford.
Yes, so we are seeking an updated financing approval for this transaction, Oxford. The project consists of 2 rooftop solar arrays. It was originally approved at the last board meeting. We are requesting an updated approval to reflect 2 minor updates to the loan. The first update is the borrower's decision to opt for a 10-year sculpted repayment schedule, where the ITC is applied in year 2. And the second update to this is the customer's inclusion of their line of credit into our financial analysis. We are requesting an updated approval, next slide please, for the same loan amount at $567,587. With the underwriter's updated financial metrics, taking into account those 2 updates, the customer's line of credit and the decision to opt for a sculpted repayment schedule. The updated metrics include a loan to value of 74.5%, lien to value at 26%, and the DSCR is at 1.16 for the property entity and 4.76 for the operating company that will be a co-borrower on the loan. Next slide. With the owner's decision to opt for a 10-year sculpted repayment schedule, the cash flows are positive every year with an overall SIR of 1.94. Does anyone have any questions on this transaction?
Okay, hearing none. Do I hear a motion to approve resolution 7?
I'll make the motion. It's Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Do you hear a second?
This is Allison. I'll second.
Thank you, Allison. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, thank you. Okay, next we're going to discuss investment programs with updates and recommendations. That sounds very much like Bert Hunter and Brian Farnan. Bert and Brian?
Yes, Good morning, Chair Reed. We're going to just quickly move through a few items here. The first up is we successfully, if we could go to the next slide. Back in 2020, some of the board members may recall that we applied to the USDA for a 20-year, $10 million 0% loan under the USDA's Rural Energy Savings Program, or RES program. That application was successfully received, but there was a long gestation process to get to an actual commitment. We were invited in May of 24, as it's shown on the timeline here, to resubmit or update our application, which we did. And so that application was submitted with a focus on 4 key areas: commercial PACE, our solar PPA program, our Smarty program, as well as an on-bill residential program, perhaps using the pay-as-you-save or inclusive utility investment model. So with that, the USDA issued its commitment in September 24. We moved forward trying to close the transaction in early 25. We did that by proposing a small close on the transaction, a small draw. The board approved a $500,000 letter of credit, which was needed for security by the USDA. That was in February. But the new administration in Washington put all grant programs of the federal government, including this one, on hold. So we had to kind of put on the brakes until June, when things got kicked into gear again, and we moved ahead with documentation. We decided at that time to do a full draw as permitted under the program, which is for up to $5 million. And we also decided that with the letter of credit fully in place, we could then be more efficient in draws in the future, which we're allowed to draw the full 10 million after the first year, provided we've deployed the first 5 million of funds. So we have now closed on the loan. We have had the $5 million LC issued, which we're asking the board to ratify today. And we also have to comply with some forms what would the federal government be without forms? So there's 2 forms that have to be completed and on record, and those require the approval of the board today. So we're bringing both of those forward to you. So,
and there's many other forms. These are only the 2 that require the board's approval. If you want to compare the state of Connecticut to the federal government, it's like a nimble startup in comparison. So we've been working really hard to kind of move this forward. And as Bert said, it's been a long timeline, and the government shutdown was kind of a unexpected wrinkle in our plans. And we are really happy to be able to get this money, and to be able to get this USDA money out of the Trump administration is great. So it's a good sign. And there's basically this resolution, and then the second one that I would ask that we can maybe move those together, and unless anyone has any questions.
Yeah, this is for the forms, and the next resolution number 9, is for the approval of that $5 million letter of credit that was issued by Webster Bank to secure the $10 million facility. By the way, that's a very efficient way of doing this. It doesn't require the USDA was looking either for cash collateral or for a letter of credit. This is a very efficient way for us to do it without tying up our cash resources. And then the fees are very small on this letter of credit. So we appreciate the support from Webster Bank, and anyway, appreciate your vote on these 2 resolutions.
Webster's been great to deal with us on this. They've been a great partner.
Okay, any questions? So we're going to take them one at a time, right? So resolution 8, do I hear a motion to approve resolution 8?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Do I hear a second?
Second, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So we're going to move on to.
We're still with resolution 9.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Resolution 9.
Oh,
Yeah,
I thought we
need to
did,
do
but
that.
we're doing both. Okay.
So, do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 9?
So moved, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. Do I hear a second?
Seconded, Adrian.
Thank you, Adrian. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay.
Okay, now we
Moving
will
on.
move on to Catalyst Power and Louise Della Pesca, our consultant on the investments team, calling in. So are you there, Louise? And please take it away.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Bert. Next slide. Thank you. So we are coming to the board this morning with a request to approve a long-term debt financing facility to a developer that's now operating in Connecticut called Catalyst Power. They're in the process of developing 5 commercial scale rooftop solar projects, all of which are part of the NRES program in Connecticut that provides an excellent incentive through there being the off-taker, which is an investment grade utility who purchases the power and associated RECs. 3 of the 5 projects in this portfolio are located in vulnerable or distressed communities, which is a good contributor to Greenbank's Justice 40 targets. So the transaction that we're looking at is a long-term senior secured debt financing facility. This would actually be the 10th such facility that we've done in the last 8 years or so. And so we've gotten quite good at putting these transactions together. The term would be 18 years with a fixed interest rate. That interest rate is determined by looking at the counterparty risk. And thank you for your attention to the memo that supports this request, where all of the commercial terms can be found in more detail. The debt would be secured by the assets of the borrower, so namely the solar projects themselves, as well as the important pledge of equity in the borrower entity. This security allows Greenbank to actually step in and own these projects in the event of default of this debt. This is something that Greenbank is uniquely well placed to do, and it's why we've been able to do 10 of these financing facilities so far with good success so far. So our recommendation to the board is to approve this transaction because it would be a impactful addition to the other transactions that we've done in this area, providing debt to solar developers in the state of Connecticut who otherwise may not have access to financing in the private sector. A very quick overview of the transaction here. I tried to elucidate on that in the previous slide, but we have the Greenbank providing term debt to the borrower itself. The borrower owns 5 commercial solar projects in this scenario. We have that pledger, which sits above the borrower, important part of the transaction because the pledger pledges its equity interest in the borrower, which is part of our security package. We also, above the pledger, have the guarantor. So that's upstream entity within the Catalyst Power structure that actually holds all the kind of staff and resources. It's not a shell company. It's not an SPV, a special purpose vehicle. That guarantor provides the Greenbank with a limited guarantee of performance and payment. So it's a kind of extra level of security for us in the transaction. And of course, the borrower is responsible for making good on the debt service over the 18-year term. So that's the snapshot of the transaction. And if anyone has any questions, be happy to answer.
And I would just like to point out, Louise, that this structure is the same structure, plus and minus, that has been used for the other 9 transactions that we have brought to the board over the years.
Correct. Thank you.
Any questions? Do we have any questions or comments or? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 10?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jamie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Aha. And so this third effort we're talking about are green bonds.
Yep, and I can handle this. We can go to the next slide, Brian. All right, so, as many of you know, and we're actually, for those that know, Bruce Chudwick, our longtime attorney over at Shipman & Goodwin, who's retired, but has actually been kind enough to stay on to do a lot of our bond work, is the one who helped us prepare these policies and procedures that are being presented to the board today. And these are basically, as we become more of a mature bond issuing entity, these are not only best practice, but really, I would say, a requirement to have these kind of board policies in place, which will help guide at a staff level with certain types of requirements and filings and things like that. And it's basically trying to put it all in one place, like, hey, these are the kind of the rules of the road. These are things you need to do on an annual basis. They're pretty straightforward. And they will keep us in compliance with future bond issuances. Nothing controversial or out of the norm here, just something that the staff needs to be mindful as we move forward with our future bond growth. Next slide. And then I would just ask for a simple resolution on this item.
Okay, do I hear any questions or concerns, or do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 11?
So moved, Joe.
Second, Joe. Do you hear a second?
Second.
From Kim.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, that includes it. I have a note here that I should ask, do we have any other business that the team would like to address?
Sure, and I think it's probably a good idea to just give a general update on Posigen. So Posigen, along with its affiliates, which are all limited liability companies, they did file for chapter level bankruptcy protection in U.S. Bankruptcy Court in the Southern District of Texas. Many of you know Delaware's kind of been the place for bankruptcy for many years.
Yeah.
Texas has kind of become one of the new hotspots for this. And I know we've also provided an email writing, but I thought it'd be good to just bring it up in a board meeting too. In the filing for bankruptcy filed significant operational reductions. As many of you are aware, Posigen laid off most of its workforce in August and subsequently issued what are called these warn notices, which they did in Connecticut and other locations. And the most recent one we received in Connecticut was November 14th. 2 Connecticut facilities have closed. A third was scheduled to cease operations on December 6th. I believe that happened. As for the bankruptcy filing, we engaged the law firm of Schwartz Law Firm in Texas. We worked with our local Connecticut counsel, Wigan and Dana, who had a relationship with them for this Chapter 11 proceeding. And just as another reminder, the Green Bank is also involved in a separate litigation in Hartford involving our battery facility, in which Posigen and Brookfield are the defendants. One thing I would point out is that there are material inconsistencies between some of the statements made by Posigen and Brookfield in the Hartford litigation as it relates to the Texas bankruptcy filings. So we're working through that. And then obviously, given the ongoing nature of both the matters, I'm trying to keep this report brief. Board members are obviously welcome to contact and reach out to me directly with any kind of questions. And I think what I would suggest is maybe in January, we know more, maybe we can go into an executive session and talk about litigation strategy. But I just wanted to provide a update on that matter.
Do we have any sense how, I think, 5,000 folks impacted in this state how they're all doing? I mean, are those projects, is anybody?
Yeah, we have about 7,000 Posigen customers in
7,000.
Connecticut. We've got a reading on about half of them, meaning there are meters that send us daily signals. We get notes twice a week from our team that those systems are performing to expectation. So we're really looking for systems dropping off because of a need for operations and maintenance. Knock on wood, so far those systems are performing, at least half of them that we have our eyes on.
So we kind of have like a dual focus, unlike some of the other creditors where, we're focused on recovering Green Bank funds as a creditor, but we're also very much just as much focused on protecting the Connecticut consumers and working with other states in this nature too.
Chair Reed?
Yes.
If I could, so I know we've kind of covered Posigen here. I wanted to see if I could provide an update on the legal situation with respect to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, if that's
Yes.
okay.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
All right, cool. So just as a reminder for the board, within the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA of 2022 was the $27 billion Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund that was modeled after the Connecticut Green Bank. This was the single largest federal government investment in climate change outside of tax credits. The Connecticut Green Bank was an indirect winner of several applications within the various GGRF programs, including, you might recall, Solar for All. DEEP won a $62.5 million project in support of Project Sunbridge, which was to support solar and storage deployment in low-income and single-family, as well as multifamily and affordable housing properties, including over $40 million of that funding being directed to the Green Bank to support our financing programs. Secondly was the National Clean Investment Fund. You might recall that the Coalition for Green Capital won a $5 billion grant to support the creation of a national climate bank, including directing $93 million of that to the Connecticut Green Bank as a financial assistance subrecipient. Of that funding, about $41 million is for Connecticut, $38 million for Puerto Rico, and $15 million for New Hampshire. With respect to the lawsuits filed against the EPA for unlawfully freezing obligated and expended funds, I wanted to give you a quick update on those cases. So if we just look at Solar for All, which is the line below, the information below the line here, of the $7 billion of obligated funds for that program through the IRA, on February 7th, you might recall that the EPA suspended access to payments of those funds through the federal system for all of those SFA awardees. Following the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act by Congress on July 3rd and then subsequently signed by the president on July 4th, that included the rescinding of the administrative funds at the EPA to oversee the program, which subsequently led to the EPA on August 7th sending termination letters to all the Solar for All awardees. In mid-October, 22 state attorney generals, including William Tong here in Connecticut, filed a lawsuit against the EPA in DC District Court, claiming breach of contract, joining 24 other Solar for All awardees in the U.S. Court of Federal Claims seeking damages. So that is where Solar for All is on the bottom line there. If we move to the top of the line here, you might recall on March 11th, the EPA sent termination letters to the three NCIF awardees. On March 12th, immediately thereafter, those awardees filed suit against the EPA seeking a temporary restraining order in the DC District Court, which was granted a week later. The plaintiffs then sought a preliminary injunction, which was granted about a month later in early April. Then on April 16th, the EPA appealed that decision to the DC Court of Appeals, granting them temporary stay on that preliminary injunction ruling. And then on September 2nd, the U.S. Court of Appeals, through its three-judge panel, ruled in favor of the EPA, and the preliminary injunction was therefore vacated. Immediately thereafter, on September 10th, the plaintiffs filed a petition for a rehearing en banc. We're all learning about all these different courts as we move through this process. So a rehearing of the en banc to the U.S. Court of Appeals, and the rehearing was granted this week on December 17th. So that's the big news that happened on Wednesday of this week for hearings to take place next February. What that means is that the DC Court of Appeals judgment filed on September 2nd is vacated, and that the partial administrative stay by the DC District Court granted on April 16th is still in effect. So the case is making its way through the legal system. This is all
It's good news.
Positive good news. Yes, for all of that legal jargon, that is good news. The status is, we continue to support the lawsuits in whatever way we can while working hard to implement Connecticut's public policies on solar and storage on multifamily affordable housing per Public Act 21-48 and electric school buses in environmental justice communities per Public Act 22-25. As we've heard over the course of today, we're focused on increasing investment in and deployment of clean energy in vulnerable communities to reduce energy costs, reduce greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution, and create jobs in our communities. So thank you for that time to just update you all on the status of the GGRF. It's positive news. We're still in the legal process. That was it.
Okay, that's it. So this feels like we're drawing our meeting to a close. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, everybody. Have a joyful holiday season. And thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays,
happy
Happy holiday.
Merry, Merry.
Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
Bye.
Yeah.